Hey guys, welcome back. In this video, I will be showing you how Eddie and I made nightstands for our guest room. So we did make two of them, the same size for each side of the bed. I'm going to try to explain everything as well as I can. I have literally 2 pages of notes with all the measurements, and hopefully I don't forget anything. If I do, let me know down in the comments and I'll try to answer your questions. Before we get started, I just wanted to address my outfit. It was pretty cold outside, so I found whatever hats we had. I brought one for me and I made Eddie put one on. And honestly, I just kind of grabbed whatever was warm. I'm wearing rain boots because the ground was wet and yeah, but anyway, moving on from my outfit. So I just, on a piece of paper before we started this project, I kind of scribbled down my idea or what I had in mind. And so we were kind of trying to figure out the measurements and how we wanted these nightstands to look. I knew I wanted the nightstands to be about 27 inches tall. I just kind of measured off of whatever bed was standing in the guest room and about that height. So Eddie cut 8 legs, 27 inches tall. We did 8 because obviously we're making 2 nightstands, so we need 4 legs for each nightstand. Then I went ahead and just sanded all of the legs down so that they were nice and smooth. Moving on to cutting the sides of the nightstand. So we cut these 14 inches by 19 inches, and Eddie cut 4 of them, 2 for each nightstand. Eddie set the table saw to 14 inches to cut the width for the sides, and then he's going to use the chop saw to cut them down into 19 inches. And I know Eddie and I both aren't wearing safety glasses, which we totally should have, but if you are doing this project at home, I suggest that you do, just for safety reasons. Then moving on to cutting the backs. So the backs were 14 inches by 22 inches long. Then Eddie went through and just kind of looked at the legs and marked where the front of the legs would be and where the back would be, because some of them had knots in the woods and we kind of wanted to hide those a little bit. Then Eddie used this blue tool, I'm not sure what it's called, but he made marks on the legs. And here it's going to show you, instead of the backs and the sides being flush with the legs, they kind of go in a little bit. It's hard to explain, but you'll kind of see when it all comes together. It just, instead of making it like a perfectly square box, it's going to inset a little bit and it looks a little nicer. Then this other blue tool that Eddie's using is called a Craig's jig, I think, and it makes pocket holes, so this way when you screw everything together, it kind of hides the screws. So we went through and made those on all of the sides. Next, Eddie is cutting 4 pieces that are 19 inches long, and so 2 for each nightstand, and these are going to go above and below the drawer, just kind of making the frame around the drawer front. And then just going through and sanding them down to make sure that they're smooth, and we are also going to make pocket holes in these. And these are 1.25" screws that will be going into those pocket holes that we made to screw everything together. And Eddie will be using this attachment that goes onto your drill to screw in those screws. It also makes it a little bit easier if you go through and just kind of roughly place the screws in ahead of time. And this is the part that I get excited about, is when things start to come together and I could visualize it. So Eddie is just going through and attaching the sides to the legs. Now he is attaching those two 19-inch pieces that are going above and below the drawer. Now measuring the top, we wanted our top to overhang a little bit, so we're adding a 1/2 inch on the sides for a little bit of an overhang. So our measurements were 22 3/4 by 16 3/4. After the top is cut, Eddie is adding this edge banding, it's called. So it looks like the wood, and you basically just iron it on. You turn the iron on, you don't put any water in the iron, and it just heats it up, and there's like a glue or adhesive or something, and it just kind of sticks to it. So he's ironing that on, and then you can just cut off the excess on the edges. This part was so satisfying to me. You just take a razor or knife and just kind of cut off the excess. Eddie said there is a special tool, but just a regular razor works just fine. And then just going through and sanding everything down so that it's nice and smooth. Eddie added some pocket screws on the inside, and this is what we're going to use to attach the top. And we did want a 1/2 inch overhang, so we are just measuring to make sure that it is centered on there. And ta-da! Honestly, if I was making this myself, I was thinking of just a simple square box with just plain legs, but Eddie is really good at making furniture, so he got a little bit creative and made it look so much better. We are also adding a shelf underneath, so Eddie is cutting pieces for the shelf to sit on, kind of like the shelf support. So 1 9-inch piece and 2 13-inch pieces. I know in the beginning of this video we were cutting double of everything for the 2 nightstands, but I think by this point we were just cutting enough for 1 nightstand. We were trying to get it done. Eddie also went ahead and added pocket holes and then sanded everything down. Throughout this video, you may have seen that Eddie uses these clamps to hold things in place, and that's also been really nice, is just to keep everything aligned, because sometimes you can hold it with your hand, but once you start drilling it moves, but with these clamps it really holds it in place. He's using these clamps to hold these pieces in place while he screws them in, and these are the 3 pieces we just cut that our shelf is going to sit on. Next, he is just cutting down the shelf, and this was 21 3/8 by 15 1/4 inches. Then he went through and just marked off the corners that he needed to notch out to fit the shelf in there. I know throughout this video Eddie is using a lot of different tools. I will try to link them down below, and he kind of does this for a living. He makes pantry cabinets and vanities, so he already had all of these tools, which was great. And I know some of you at home don't really have these, so probably making this kind of nightstand might not be that practical, but if you do have these tools and you do make these shelves, let me know. I'd love to see what they come out like. And it fit in there perfectly, which was great. And he ended up taking it back out, and he is going to put edge banding on the sides that you can see as well, to just make everything look nice and smooth, and when you paint it you won't see those lines on the plywood. And then going through and sanding down all the edges, making sure that they're smooth. And then he did make pocket holes on the bottom to attach the shelf. You'll see here in a minute of him just putting it all together. Moving on to cutting the drawer fronts. So these were 18 3/4 by 6 1/4, and we wanted an 1/8 inch gap around it. So you'll see when he puts it in, it's not completely flush around the sides. There's just a tiny little gap. Now he's cutting the pieces for the actual drawer. So we wanted the drawer to be 5.5 inches by 18 inches wide and 14 inches depth. He also cut little grooves in them, and that is so that the plywood slides right in. This is going to be the drawer bottom, and it'll just slide right in there and it'll hold a little bit better instead of just attaching it to the actual bottom. And then he took the measurements to cut the plywood for the bottom, and that was 13.5 by 17.5. Now time to assemble the drawer together. So he added a little bit of glue on the corners and then used this little nail gun to nail it together. I believe it's called a pin nailer actually, and it makes really tiny holes so you can barely see them. After the 3 sides are together, he slid in the plywood before adding the 4th piece. And now just taking measurements to make sure that the drawer is square. While Eddie was doing this, I ran out to Lowe's to get drawer slides, and he is putting in these 1/2 inch strip pieces of plywood to attach the drawer slides to. Now he is adding the edge banding to the drawer front, cutting off the excess and then sanding down the sides. By this time, I came home from Lowe's with the drawer slides. I got the 14-inch soft close drawer slides, so Eddie's going to go ahead and install those. And now he's going to attach the drawer front with little screws from the inside. And ta-da! I love how they turned out. Honestly, so much better than I even pictured or expected them to look. Please give this video a thumbs up if you think Eddie did a wonderful job. And after all of this, he went ahead and made a second one. But stay tuned for the next video. I will show you what they look like complete and what they look like styled in our guest room. And again, I tried to explain everything the best that I could, and sorry if some of it is confusing. If you have any questions or if you're trying to make something like this, let me know. I'll try to answer them. And I will also link all of the tools and supplies we use down below. I hope you all enjoyed watching this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you are new to my channel, and stay tuned for the next reveal video.